This is Scott.
This is Rebecca.
Welcome to Hardy Party of 5.5.
It's kind of like a variety show.
That's right, a smile for your ears.
So keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times and let's see where this roller coaster takes us.
After kayaking, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Probably more adventures and taking the kids and kind of exposing them to all sorts of different kind of outdoor adventures and stuff like that. But honestly, I kind of consider myself living the dream currently, and I just want to continue living the dream.
For me, it's got this kind of really cool balance between tranquility and chaos. This almost like yin and yang of kind of life. I kind of always wanted to become a professional kayaker and always really dreamed of doing this. But at the same time, I never really thought how am I going to make it all work? And then, I don't know, dreams became reality, and I just I turned my passion into my lifestyle. So it's pretty cool. Between my two kids, I've got a 6-year-old son, Tucker, and a 3-year-old daughter, Parker. They're both adventurous in their own ways, but whether they totally follow my footsteps or not, I'm just trying to enjoy the experiences that I have with them. And really, we live in such a technology-heavy world right now that I just love for them to kind of step out of that and really just see nature for what it is and all of its beauty. I'm still definitely doing risky stuff, but I guess I'm more cautious because more than anything, I just don't want my kids to grow up without a dad.
Welcome to Hardy Party of 5.5 from Keystone, Colorado. We're here on our annual family ski adventure.
And speaking of adventure, we just talked to Nick Troutman. He is a world champion athlete. He's a podcast host. He's a content creator. And he's a consultant and coach. And more than any of that, he's a family man.
He is a family man, and that's what I enjoy today. So you guys don't even have to be a huge fan of kayaking or anything like that to love this interview, because he talks so much about being a family guy and how to travel and see things on a budget of any kind. And so I loved it so much. It was a great interview, and I hope you enjoy it. Here's our interview with Nick Troutman. Okay, Nick, you're from Canada? Is that right?
Yeah, well, born and raised up in Canada, and yeah, when I was around, I guess, I don't know, I've been traveling abroad since I was 16, and then
Wow.
The very short version, because I could tell you the longer version of this story, but is that I essentially got asked to come travel and compete with my idol in the sport of kayaking at the time, and went and traveled around with his family for 6 months, became really close with the family and his daughter. And then a couple years later, we started dating, and then we got engaged. And long story short, I've been living down in Tennessee for 13 or 14 or 15 years, something like that. Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in Canada? Were there a lot of, what was your activities? Did you have the outdoor adventure, or were you more at athletics, traditional athletics, or?
I would say a bit of everything. So I grew up in a small town, and within that small town, I don't know, I guess you're just kind of introduced into just whatever the local, what normal people do in that environment. And so, yeah. So I did a lot of what I would call traditional sports, baseball, hockey, a little bit of soccer, but not really. And I was just very interested into sports as a kid. My older brother, I'm also a middle child. So I've got an older and younger brother of 3 years separation of both of us. And And I always joked that I wanted to be a professional athlete in like any sport that I picked up. Like I'd pick up a tennis racket and I'd be like, oh, I'm going to be a professional tennis player when I grow up. And my brother would be like, you've never even played tennis in your life. Like, you know, nothing about that. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll be a professional basketball player. Like, just like, I don't know. I thought being a professional athlete was like this cool idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so yeah, long story short, I did all the traditional sports when I was in high school. I got really into rugby, and hockey again was like a big part of my life pretty much through my whole childhood. And then I was also pretty into skiing, and then I got into skateboarding and snowboarding a little bit more in high school. And then kind of in that same era is when I found kayaking, and the aspect that there was a freestyle component of kayaking really was a big draw for me. And so as soon as I like found out that you could do like flips and tricks and stuff, I was like, oh, it's not just these like pointy boats that, you know, float downstream. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. And then on the, you know, flip side too, my home river was the Ottawa River up in Canada. And it's essentially like, if you follow skiing or anything like that, it's like the Whistler Blackcomb of freestyle kayaking. Like it's arguably the best river in the world. And so the combination of all that stuff, eventually I had a big draw to kayaking, but I kind of started off in all the other traditional sports.
So what was that moment that I think you were like 13 maybe when kayaking really got a hold of you?
Yeah. So essentially at that same time, like it started, I guess, with my best friend who Joel Kowalski. We did a lot of sports together. We played hockey together. We skied and we snowboarded and we skateboarded and all that kind of stuff. And then one summer he was like, hey, I'm going to go try kayaking at my dad's kayak school. I'm probably not going to be able to hang out with you that much this summer. And at the time we'd spent like a lot of time together. And I was kind of bummed. I was like, oh, bummer. He's like, well, you can come try it if you want. And so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot. And within 15 minutes, I fell in love with the sport. I fell in love with the whole freestyle aspect. I pretty much learned how to roll immediately. And then Joel, who again, my best friend, was like in the class above me because he'd already done like a week ahead of me or something like that. And so he already knew a couple things. So then I was just trying to play catch up and trying to learn as fast as I could. And yeah, the whole thing was it was new and it was exciting. And it was pretty much like inseparable. And I, for the most part, haven't left a kayak since. And that was like 18 years ago or 20 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
So of the other sports, what's your favorite sport? Like you talked about other sports you've played other than kayaking. Which one would you say is your second favorite?
Oh man. I don't know if I have an answer for that. I love pretty much anything that gets me in the outdoors. So I like rock climbing. I love skiing and snowboarding. I love surfing. I mean, anything. I've never, I haven't even skydived before or like anything like that. And I'm like, oh, I think I want to get into skydiving. I'd love to try that. I want to try paragliding some more. Pretty much get me in the outdoors and I'm going to be stoked.
I've done skydiving twice and it's pretty cool. I haven't done solo yet, but I've done 2 tandems.
You've done something adventurous that Nick has not done?
Yeah, that would be the one thing I think. Yeah. It's pretty cool though.
That's cool. I'll definitely have to give it a shot for sure.
Yeah. So recently we talked to Eric Weinmayer, and he's the first blind man that summited Everest. And he also kayaked the Grand Canyon. And that's one of the big things we talked to him about. But he was talking about that kayaking was scarier to him than climbing the tallest mountain in the world. And he talked about the unpredictability of the water. And probably when he's just using his hearing, he's just hearing it from all sides. So what's going through your mind when you're going through like the roughest water you can go through? How do you navigate that? I can't even imagine. I don't even know. I'm
trying to think exactly how to answer this. What's going through my mind, or like how am I hearing it? Like just
how do you navigate it, and what's your thought process as you're going through?
Do you like step back and you're like, okay, we're gonna go this way and we're gonna do that, and then once you get in it, you're just like your mind's just in it and you just got to go, or are you? I mean, I feel like
Yeah, no, I was gonna say it's a lot like that where for the hardest rapids anyway, it's best to kind of get out and scout the line beforehand.
Yeah.
At least I would advise people to do that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've watched some of your videos. You scout all that out before you do it?
I like to think most of it I scout out, or at least I'll like follow somebody that's trustworthy. But once the thing about kayaking versus maybe climbing or some other sports is the fact that the environment is continually changing. And so, I mean, unless you're climbing like, in snow and you're worried about avalanches or things like that, or maybe, loose rock, for the most part, the mountain's pretty still, right? Like it's not moving at all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas in the river, you can scout your line and you can find your line or whatever. But once you're in it, the river's continually changing. Like the only constant about kayaking is that there is no constants in the sense that the rapids are constantly changing. And so you're just continually adapting the whole time. So once you kind of peel out of the eddy and you're in, the flow, which ironically is like, in my mind, such a perfect analogy with like the flow state and stuff like that. But you're just forced into this environment that you have to make lightning fast decisions and just adapt with the scenario that's at hand. And so, if a wave breaks or if a boil pushes you in one direction or not, you can't stop and think about it and reassess. You've got to like make, just quick decisions and keep going. And there's no like pausing the river. Like you can't, at least when you're like, when you're climbing, you can like pause and start to like think out your move, right? Like,
Take a break and reassess. Yeah.
Right. Or like, where's maybe my next handhold or foothold or whatever? I'm going to look around and really assess the situation. When you're in the rapid, the flow just, it keeps pushing you. So you're just taken with whatever's coming at you all at once. I don't know.
This is a mother's worst nightmare. I find my 23-year-old's phone all the time in the water. Like I can find his phone. He's either in the water or he's in a big patch of green. And he just will always like send me videos when he's out. He has a GoPro on his, and I'm like, oh my gosh, just let me know you're out of the water.
Well, at least when you get the video, he's out.
When you get the video, he's out of the water.
Yeah. So my
mom used to be like pretty worried as well. And she'd always tell me like, oh, call me like once you're off the river, or text. Well, it was probably before text even. So it's like, call me. She'd always say like, oh, call me, whatever. And I was also probably young and just didn't want to call my mom all the time. Like a combination of both probably. So I'd be like, Mom, how's this? I'll call you when I'm in trouble. And if I don't call you, you can expect that everything's okay.
There you go.
At first she wasn't that into it, but now it's just, she's gotten accustomed to it.
The situation is, if you have lost your phone, how are you going to call me if you're in trouble? See, the mom's mind works this way.
Yeah.
It's problematic. Wait till your kids are out of your control down the river and you're like, now where are they again?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that one.
Yeah, I know. It's tricky.
What's been your hardest run? Like where you were like, oh, this is something. Have
you done the Grand Canyon yet?
I have. Yeah. I've been fortunate enough to do it twice so far. It's a gorgeous run. It really is amazing. It's a beautiful combination of like just very scenic environment, this really cool deep canyon that is filled with tons of history. And then also some really great whitewater and rapids in there. So, and the fact that you get to camp out and the whole thing is a ton of fun. And if anybody hasn't done it, I highly encourage everybody, if you have the opportunity to go paddle the Grand Canyon at some point, it's a highlight of life for sure.
The canyon part of that is so fascinating. When we were interviewing Eric, that's what he was talking about, was like the sound, the way it bounces off the canyon, and how it was really confusing to him about where things were because of the echo back there, which I thought was so fascinating.
Yeah, I could totally see that. The canyon walls definitely give off an echo, and it would trip you out. Even like, I experienced that myself, where just like paddling down and being aware that it's an echo because I'm I can see the rapids coming up
Right.
or whatever, but that it sounds like it's coming from a totally
Yeah.
different direction. Yeah.
So crazy. Okay, let's talk about.
So hold on, he was
wait.
about to share his hardest run.
Oh,
I was
okay.
gonna
Yeah,
say that.
sorry. I was the one to talk about the family, but we can talk about hardest run first.
Yeah.
Hardest run. I don't know if I have a definite answer for that.
Please don't say Worcester in Oklahoma with Drew, our son.
I don't think that was my hardest run. No, I'd probably say maybe something over in California or Iceland, maybe. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been
Okay.
super fortunate to paddle
Not a
all
lot.
over the
You've
the
paddled
world.
in Iceland?
Yeah. And
Oh, wow. That's
it's
cool.
one of my favorite places. Yeah, it's gorgeous over there for
So
sure.
crazy.
Oh, wow.
Can't take the RV over there though, can you?
No, it's harder to drive. Yeah, you gotta jump on an airplane.
Right. Okay. I want to know all about Emily. And from this point forward, Nick, all your answers need to be directed into making sure that my husband understands that we could live this lifestyle. Okay.
Yes, she
So,
wants to RV.
I
I'm a
want an
little hesitant.
RV. I need you to guide us in that direction. Okay. So how did you meet Emily? You told us a little bit earlier, and then how does she feel about all of this RVing business with children and all of that?
Well, I guess the longer version of my previous story is I'm trying to think how not to repeat myself too much. Yeah, the longer version is essentially I met Emily when I was super young. She was my best friend, Joel, who got me into kayaking. She was his younger sister's best friend.
Okay.
And so we met before I got into kayaking and anything like that. And we would kind of tease each other because we were kids, and yeah, that's just what kids do.
Yeah.
And then I got into kayaking, fell in love with the sport. Her dad was, I don't know, at the time, 3-4 time world champion, and was like one of my heroes in the sport, probably my biggest hero in the sport. And I totally loved what he was doing and wanted to do more of that. He then started his own kayak company called Jackson Kayak.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to become a team member.
And Jackson Kayak. This is our son's that follows
He's
you
got it with
around.
him.
He's got
Yeah.
his Jackson Kayak with him all the time.
Yeah. And so, so yeah, then I went and traveled with them. I got to be fairly close with the family. But there was kind of like this rule that I could be on the team and I could travel with them, but I couldn't date their daughter. And I was like super into kayaking. So I wasn't going to like risk, this opportunity to go paddle and train with my hero, for some girl or something like that. I was like, pretty devoted.
Yeah.
And then quickly, I don't know if you'd say I just fell in love or what, but I was definitely like, okay, I really like this girl. I'm going to, risk this whole kayaking opportunity. And so I guess probably like 2 years later, I went up to EJ and I was like, hey, I love being on your team and traveling with you guys and competing and learning from you guys, but I really want to date your daughter. And if that means I can't be on Team Jackson Kayak, then so be it.
Wow.
And so that was kind of, I mean, I don't know, I might be paraphrasing that a little bit, but he just gave me like a big high five, and he was like, I was like, just waiting for you to ask. Like they kind of loved me at the time, I guess. And so he was all excited, and then we dated for like 2 years. And then the same kind of thing when I was like going to ask him, for his approval to ask Emily to marry me. And so we'd been paddling a whole bunch, and I was like, oh, I'm going to ask him now, like for his approval. And I kept putting it off because I was super intimidating. Like if you know the guy, he's kind of an intimidating guy. He's like super strong and just like, larger than life character. And so I'm like putting it off. And then eventually I'm like, man, I can't put it off a whole bunch later. And so I was like, hey, EJ, I'm going to ask Emily to marry me. Like, is it, or maybe I said something like, is it okay if I ask Emily to marry me or something like that? And he was like, oh, high five. And like, same thing. Like I was super nervous, but he was very supportive. And in his like joking style, he was like, well, I doubt she'd ever say yes anyway. And so that's always kind of like, we've got a pretty close relationship that way. But yeah, then Emily and we got married, and the cool part about, to kind of 360 this long story around the traveling and the RV and all that stuff, is she grew up her whole life pretty much traveling in an RV, or at least they were 7 or 8 years full time where they didn't even have a house. They just had an RV and they traveled around. And so she grew up like her whole elementary and high school. Actually, she did homeschooling out of the RV and just traveled around with her dad, who was competing. And then when she got a little bit older, her and her brother started competing as well. So it wasn't a hard, it's not like I had to like really convince her or twist her arm to get her to kind of want to do the same thing, because she was super used to that.
She was into it.
Yeah, she was obviously super into it. As far as like trying to convince Scott for like, getting into traveling around and the whole RV life, what I would say, and this is actually a line from my father-in-law from EJ, is he says that the beauty about the RV lifestyle is it's the best real estate that you could ever buy, meaning that your RV, you can park it anywhere that you want to be. So there's no way that you could afford all the real estate in the world that the RV will bring you, because you just, unless you're like Elon Musk, you just can't buy up that much property. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't, you're going to be able to travel there in anyway. So, the fact that you can just travel around so much, all these unique places. And then on top of that, it's the ultimate freedom in the sense that, if the weather's bad, go somewhere else. If you're into kayaking and the rivers aren't running, go to where they are running. If you're into skiing or snowboarding, if there isn't much snow this year, go to a different mountain range. Like, it's essentially the ultimate freedom that you can just kind of go anywhere. If you want warmer weather, go south, go wherever you want to go. That's warmer. If you want a drier climate, go west, whatever. So I don't know.
I love it.
Recommend it more highly.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to get really practical here. What's the toilet situation on the RV? This is one thing that really concerns me.
What?
Like,
what's
the process like?
Actually
trees outside.
Well, you can't always do that outside.
Okay.
No. Yeah, it's a lot easier than that. I mean, you're not the first person to kind of ask how this all works, because I think it's actually a pretty common thing. But we lived out of like a Honda Westfalia. No, we lived out of a Honda Element and a Westfalia and a Subaru. We lived out of like a ton of cars before we got into RVs and stuff like that, when Emily and I were like super young. And having an RV with a toilet is 100 times better, because you actually have a toilet. And then it's a very simple process that whenever your Blackwater or your gray water tanks are full, you just drive it to a dump station of some sort, right? Like there's public stations, there's you go to an RV park, there's a lot of different places to properly dump it. And then you just hook up a hose. You can wear rubber gloves, hook up this hose, and it's all like super simple. And then you just pull a lever. Yeah, it's essentially like a second step of the exact same of like flushing a toilet.
The problem is
that other end, and then you flush the toilet again.
The problem is that he has watched the movie RV with
Have you seen the Robin Williams movie?
And that's all he knows about.
And it just shoots up like an oil well at him.
Yeah, that's all I can imagine. That's all he knows. But I'll do it.
You do
I'll do it.
We'll try it for summer.
Yeah.
That's right. My parents are full-time RVers, or they have been for 11 years, and they do work camping at different RV parks. And their biggest luxury was when they got a washer and dryer in their RV. That was like big deal. And they could have a little more luxury.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
So how do you wrangle the kids?
Washer and dryer.
So what? Do you have a washer and dryer? I'm sure you.
No, we don't.
You don't?
A washer and dryer would be a big deal. Yeah.
So where do you do your laundry? We're getting real practical. I need you to answer take out all the practical.
No, it's all good. We just go to like a coin laundry place,
cool.
like in any town.
Most of his interviews are probably like on kayaking and things. Ours are on like, how do you flush your toilet?
Yeah.
It's perfect.
That's That's what we got to do.
You're trying to convince me.
I'm trying to convince you.
That's what I needed to know.
So what's a typical day like
It's
in your RV, like with your kids? I saw that you were homeschooling them, or your wife was doing a little bit of that in the first episode in Bentonville, Arkansas. And so, like, how old are your kids?
my son Tucker, he's 8, and my daughter Parker is 5.
Okay. So she's doing kindergarten,
Mhm.
something like that.
Yeah. So we, yeah, I think maybe one. I think in kindergarten. I don't even know. It might be grade 1. I'm not certain.
Yeah,
It goes to show how attentive I truly am. I think I'm also like, I think my son's in grade 3, but again,
Maybe we should have had
maybe he's in
Emily
grade 4,
on
sure.
as well.
But anyway, yeah, you probably should have. Emily would be slapping me upside the back of the head for sure. Clearly, Emily does a lot more of the homeschooling than I do, just by answering those simple questions. But I do, well, she kind of helps me where she'll tell me some days like, oh, here, you need to do school with the kids, but she'll like open up the books and just tell me like what lessons that we're doing. It's pretty straightforward, and I can be a fairly easy job being a teacher. But man, it props to the teachers of the world out there. Like there's definitely some patience needed at times.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's the whole thing's fairly, I don't know, it's just, I would say it's easy, but at the same time, I think it's just what we're used to. So I don't know if it is easier or if it's just easy for me. I don't know, but it's I guess I'll put it this way. Once you force yourself in any situation, I think you're just going to, and maybe this is because of the whole kayaking environment that I've spent so much time in, that I'm used to just reacting with whatever life kind of throws at me. So if we're out in the trailer or in the RV or whatever, and there's a situation, hopefully nothing like the movie RV where the black water is exploding or anything like that, but you just kind of deal with it, right? And it's the same with homeschooling, it's the same with traveling, and I mean, I don't know, I think we just kind of like you do what you want to do, and if life throws you lemons, you try to make aid out of it, I guess. I don't know, I don't have a better analogy for you.
Yeah. So you guys recently started this show called The Great Family Adventure.
Yeah.
I love this. I wish we had done this when our kids were younger. It would have been right up our alley. Yeah. When our kids were younger, we made a list of all the places we wanted to take them before they were out of the house, up to 18, and lined up the years with it. We were very organized about it, much less like what you guys are. Hey, it's time to move, get in the RV, we're going somewhere else. Ours was a little more calculated of like, here's where we're going to take our kids. But I love this whole adventure idea. And recently, you guys, I saw the Bentonville, Arkansas one, which was so cool. But then at the end of it, Emily's like, hey, we're done. We're going to go see where else we can go. And I'm like, whoa, what? You can just kind of do that? And so where did the idea of this show come from? And like, what do you hope to achieve with it?
Oh gosh, great question. Where did the show idea come from? It had been something that I'd been kind of like working on for a couple of years. I had this idea a couple of years ago that it would just be a fun idea to kind of to travel around. Well, I mean, we were traveling around with the family. So I guess more than anything, it was more like an idea to kind of share the travels with other people, and then also kind of like this interview, but to encourage other people that it's possible, and it's really not that difficult. You just kind of have to leap of faith and go for it. And so that's kind of like, I guess the goal of the show is to, for the most part, just to encourage other people to, I don't know, to spend time with their family, and to get outside, to go explore, and to do rad adventures, because even just with America alone, like obviously born and raised up in Canada and I've traveled abroad, I would encourage everybody to travel as much as possible, because it's such a great opportunity to just learn so much, or at least it has been for me, and something that I want to share with my kids. But it's also something that, being that I've been so fortunate to be able to do this, that I'd love to encourage other people to do the same. And I've heard from my family members, from tons out there just like, oh, well, I just can't, I just can't. I've got a job, or I've got bills, or there's always an excuse of why you can't do it. I don't make enough money. I can't do that. And it's like, well, I don't think you know how much money I make. And I don't think you know what my bills look like or anything. Like, we've all got the same thing. It doesn't matter. One, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you're going to have bills. Two, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you can still go travel. It could just go into, either your municipal park that's just on the street. It could be going to the state park that's down the road. It could be going across the country to a national park of sorts, or it could be jumping on an airplane and going abroad. And so there's so many opportunities to go explore at any budget. And that's kind of a little bit, I guess, what the show's more or less trying to encourage is just like, get out, explore, spend time with family.
I love that. I love that at any budget. I mean, I'm a hairdresser, so I do have a job where I'm tied to a location because I have clientele, but I do talk to a lot of clients about travel, and as we've done a lot of traveling, and they're always asking me, well, what are the places to go to? And I'm always like, here's a free list of things to do in Colorado Springs. I mean, there's so many things to do out there that are budget friendly.
It doesn't have to be as expensive as you think.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't have to be. Even though our son says that we're super bougie because we stay in hotels. He's like sleeping in his car, but we're like, but we actually, I'm 50. So
yeah.
But
that's
still,
like the perfect example though with your son is that like he's able to travel around, and whether he's sleeping in a tent or, on the dirt somewhere or in the back of his car, but he's still able to do it. And he's essentially trying to overcome the obstacles by essentially taking action and going for it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So and we've seen a lot of like that generation. They're very much like, we're either going to go get a degree and do the college life, or a lot of them are just like, I'm going to be off the grid and I'm not doing any of that. And they are choosing this path.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool. Like you mentioned travel.
I guess.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I'm probably more in personally with your son, Drew, in the sense of just like go and explore the world and get my degree that way. The School of Hard Knocks. But at the same point, it's not like there's a right answer. It's to each their own, right? And so if going to school and getting your degree, if that's super important to you, then go do that. If traveling the world and trying to experience, different cultures and stuff like that is really important to you, go do that. You've got one life to live. So, live it the best that you can and experience as much as you can, and realize that there's no right answer or wrong answer. And I've got to constantly remind myself that with parenting. I'm like, man, I wish my kids sometimes came with an instructional manual, because I'm sure I'm doing things wrong all the time. But I also try to just remind myself that there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, I'm sure on all the episodes we'll watch of your show, there's maybe, I don't know, I haven't seen any yet, of like the kids just totally losing it and breaking down and just having a bad go of it, and you having to get everybody back in check. I'm sure that probably never happens in your RV. It's always probably just beautiful, isn't it?
That happens all the time. All the time.
Well, I love what you were saying about traveling, though, because we've traveled a lot and I've traveled overseas, and there's really no way to replace that education of just being in a new culture, and you just understand how we're so similar, because we always think of our differences, but when you're in different countries, you realize we're so similar. And I think it helps you interact with people better as you get older, and like it's great for your kids.
I outlined too that I'm going to look it up quick. The Mark Twain quote on traveling. Gosh, what is it?
What is that?
I can't remember it. I know what he's going at.
Totally. I've got half of it in my head, and I can't quote the thing properly. Here it is. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow mindedness. And many people, essentially, the Coles Note version is travel removes prejudice and different thought patterns of that your way is the right way. And for me, like for instance, in North America, a very simple analogy, a lot of people now, as of lately, there's, people that are eating vegan lifestyles and stuff like that. But when I grew up, eating cows was pretty normal. That was just kind of a normal thing. You'd eat hamburger, right? Or steaks or whatever. But eating horse was not normal.
Right.
But if you go to another country like Iceland, where they have an abundance of horses and a lack of cattle, they eat horse. And if you go to India, where a cow is a religious, or
symbol
status, or what symbol is the word that I'm looking for. Then and you don't eat beef or anything like that. So it's just like we're all taught what we life, because that's just the way that we were taught. It's the way that we were raised. And if you don't travel, rarely do we question those thought patterns, because it's just like, well, I was taught this way and that's just the way it is. But the more that you travel and the more that you see other cultures and other ways of life and just how other people do, wait a second, maybe that's just one way. It doesn't mean that it's the only. And there's so many ways you can add into every different aspect, but food's one of the easier. But yeah, there's just so many ways to look at life.
Yeah,
so many different. Another example, which I don't know if it makes perfect sense, but I had friends from Uganda that were coming to the World Championships up in Canada, and it was kind of like early fall. I think it was end of August or early September, something like that. Anyway, they came from Uganda up to Canada, and the sun is setting, and sun's setting whatever time it was, like 9 o'clock at night. And they're like, no, it's like 7 o'clock or 6:30 or whatever time that they thought it was. And we're like, no, it's 9 o'clock. And they're like, no, dude, I've lived my entire life. I know that this is the time when the sun sets, because they live near the equator and the sun always sets at the exact same time every day for their entire life. Wow, and they're just like, it's like, like a state altering scenario where they're like, wait a second, you mean that the sun sets at different times in different places of the world? Like just that simple, idea. You're like, whoa. What else out there maybe was I, that I thought were like concrete facts that could be different in other places of the world. So there's, I don't know, travel. I couldn't encourage that more, for sure.
I think that's a super cool environment to raise your kids in, with those philosophies and being able to introduce them to all the different cultures and also all the different age groups and such. I know one thing that we wanted our kids to be able to carry on a conversation with an adult as well as a child when they were children, teaching them how to talk to an older person, sit down on the couch and have a conversation, and so that this just lends itself to like so many wonderful experiences for them. I'm sure you're doing a great job. I know there's many breakdowns in the RV, but I'm sure you're doing a great job. So what are your philosophies with them, and how do you teach them to be fearless? Do your kids watch you like go off this amazing waterfall and they're like, never, ever do I want to do that? Or they like, let me in. I want to go with dad.
I guess as far as the like fearlessness part, my children are very different in that aspect, in the sense that my son seems to be, up to this point in life, much more like my wife, and very like calculated and somewhat risk averse. And my daughter is probably a lot more like me and way more ready to take on risk and like, I'm going to jump and learn how to fly on the way down. And so they both like kayaking, but they have kind of different ways to kind of go about it. My son's definitely more like calculated and wants to really understand everything before he kind of dives in. And my daughter's just like, let me at it. The other weird part about that was like how much of it is nature versus nurture. In this, son looks a lot like my wife, clearly has a lot of genes, and so how much of it is maybe like genetics, that he's like a lot like my wife, and then my daughter looks a lot like me, and so how much of it is genetics, that she's more ready to take on risk like myself, or how much of it is environment, in the sense that my wife was a firstborn child and my son is a firstborn. I was a secondborn. My daughter's a secondborn. Like it's, I don't know. I don't have the answers, but it's interesting to think sometimes, like how much of it is genetics, how much of it is environment, how much of it is like just coincidence. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a lot of truth to that birth order thing, even though our son, that's the adventurer. He is the oldest, but he is definitely still the adventurer. But there is a lot of truth to that. They're natural born kind of leaders and like go-getters. So that's kind of cool.
Well, on the other side of childhood, there's a great moment in your first episode. Like you had just taken the kids on a little wave that they could go through in Bentonville, because that's where your first episode is. And once they got out, it was so hilarious to watch them get muddy from head to toe. And it's just one of those great kid moments, you know. Mm-hmm. And it just seemed like y'all loved it too. You were like, you're totally into this. And I was just wondering, like in your life, I feel like that carefree attitude is kind of what, even personally and professionally, just that having fun and enjoying the moment is something that you're really into too.
Mm-hmm.
So is that something?
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I was going to say, I do try my best to enjoy the moment and live the moment, which again, I'm continually trying to improve on that. But as far as that like whole mud pit scene in the TV show, we had like finished wrapping for the day. Like we finished filming, like it was a wrap. Like we got the kayak clips, whatever. And we're literally packing everything up and walking to get it, drive back there. And I turn around and my daughter's just like laying in the mud, making like mud angels. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how are we going to get back in the truck now? And so it just turned into like, we obviously turned the cameras back, film, but it was like, it was not planned. And we were like very much like ready to leave. And I was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to deal with this? Like, so we had to like take the kids, they played in the mud for a bit, but then we like had to take them swimming back in the river, try to clean them off, strip them down and like put them back in the truck and stuff like that. Again, I guess more than anything, it's just like kind of what I've been saying this whole episode or this whole interview is just saying like, life throws whatever it wants at you, and sometimes you just have to deal with it. And I think parents like the example of that. I don't know if just all my time spent in a kayak has like helped prepare me for that or not. But yeah, you just got to deal with whatever life throws at you.
Yeah, we in parenting for us when our kids were little and they'd go out and we'd be climbing in the treehouse. We'd look out and we'd say, "Is today a good day to go to the ER if we need to go?" Yeah, it's a good day. Stay in the treehouse. And then the other days we'd be like, "No, we don't have time today. You got to get out of the treehouse today because we don't have time to go to the ER tonight." That's how we made our decisions. Like, do we have time in our day to like manage this situation if it becomes out of control? But we love letting them go and do. It's so great to let them do that. So often parents now are very much like, you know,
it feels like things are too safe now.
Too safe.
So I wonder if the younger generation is like kind of pushing back against that, and that's why they want this more freedom and just being on the road. So,
I can see that.
Okay, so for the show, you've been to Bentonville and you were in Tennessee in the last episode. Can you give us like a hint of where you're going next, or do you know where you're going next?
Where are you going next? And how do you decide?
Yeah.
Do you really just say, I mean, we're going here now? Water looks good over there? That's what you do?
I mean, as far as everyday traveling, that's definitely what we do. As far as like where we're filming, there is a little bit of planning that goes like into it in the sense of we don't all just like jump in the truck together and drive to the next spot. We've already filmed our third episode. I don't know if I'm even supposed to say where it was filmed or not, but the third episode is actually up on the Ottawa River in Canada, in my hometown where I grew up.
We only have a couple of listeners, Nick. It's going to be fun.
It'll be fun. You'll be good.
It'll be fun.
It was super fun.
So that's back where you grew up.
We were actually up there. Yeah,
that's so cool.
That's awesome.
Our son dates a girl from Bentonville. So we had just spent a lot of time there. It's a really cool place.
Awesome.
There's a lot to do there.
Super sad place. I had been there previously to filming, and that was actually one of the reasons why we wanted to go film there, because I rad, like
Yeah.
just great biking and just I don't know, so much stuff to do. And yeah, so that's kind of like, I don't know, there's a combination of different things, in the sense that sometimes we just kind of want to go film. Other times, if like, tourism board kind of wants to help promote their area, and they reach out to us and say, hey, what do you guys think about filming here or whatever. It's kind of like a mixed bag of like where we go and all that stuff. But there's like a little bit of planning that goes into each show for sure.
No, it's awesome. We are loving the show.
We love it. And our 23-year-old's watching it too.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we recommend so many things for him to watch. He doesn't usually watch them. So we're like, what? We have the same love here with your family,
Right.
or with him. It's drawn us together.
That's cool.
And we're so much cooler now that
We're so much cooler.
That's right. So I assume you're back in Tennessee for Christmas, right? Do y'all hang out there for Christmas? So what's Christmas like for your fam?
What's Christmas like? I mean, we're in Tennessee, so there's usually not very much snow, if any. Last year we actually had White Christmas, which was pretty cool. I think it was like the first time in like 30 years or something. But it's usually pretty warm, so we're usually outside playing some sort of games and stuff like that. The kids will like Christmas morning wake us up. I think a pretty classic, kids wake up your parents like, oh, Santa came. It's like we go open presents.
Yeah.
I'd probably make some coffee, sip some coffee while they're opening for presents. Then we'll go up to Emily's parents and my in-laws live like a minute away from us. We're pretty much next door neighbors. And so we'll go have breakfast up there and do just a lot of family stuff. We're only home. We're on the road like 6 to 10 months out of the year, and we're only really home for a couple of months out of the entire year. And that's usually the holidays. So we're usually home like for Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of time in between. But so we try to like spend as much time around home for the holidays and spend a lot of time with family and stuff like that. And then we head out on the road again January 5th or 6th to film our next episode after that. And so we'll be hanging out through New Year's, and then we'll kind of pack the truck and trailer back up and hit the road again.
Do you and Emily exchange Christmas presents?
We do. We definitely do. I think actually this year I told her, we'll see. I might end up getting her a present anyway. We had kind of like come to terms that we would give each other like a mutual gift where we were going to get tickets to Hawaii to go visit some family over there and do like a big family trip to Hawaii in end of January. And so we'll see what goes above and beyond that. But we also, like, I took the kids last week to we go and I'll take them to go Christmas shopping for Emily. So I'll take them to like some stores and they get to pick out whatever they want to give my wife. And I always find that super funny because she'll be like, oh, you got me a candle. Thank you. Like, it just like, I don't know. I used to do it when I was a kid. And I always thought it was like a super fun thing to like give presents. I still like giving presents is my favorite part of Christmas. And so, I don't know if that's the same for my kids or not. Just the idea that like they get to, buy presents and give presents. We're trying to like encourage that. So, yeah.
It's a little difficult in the RV because, you don't have as much space. I went with my parents this year. They finally live in a house for Christmas for the first time in 11 or 12 years. And I told my mom, I'm so excited. Your world has opened up for you with Christmas presents, because before it was like, here's some coins for the laundromat and here's a gas card, that's because there's not a lot of room. So their world has opened up a little bit for them this year. But thank you so much, Nick, for totally upping our cool factor.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like, our kids think we're the coolest now, and this is all a tribute to you. We appreciate that. And we're so on board with your show. I love that you're being able to show people how to do adventure of all different monetary forms. Like, I think it's so great for everybody to see. So we appreciate you taking time with us today, in your schedule with your kids. I wish we get to meet the kids, but you know,
Awesome.
we'll just watch them on your episode. They're adorable. You're doing a great job. Parenting's hard. Keep at it.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. And next time we come to the Oklahoma Wave, maybe you guys will have to come visit.
Absolutely.
Okay, that'd be great.
I know
Appreciate it.
Drew follows you everywhere, so I'm sure he'll keep us posted as to your whereabouts. We'll probably find you somewhere.
Okay, Nick, I appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Thanks.
You guys
so
have
much.
a Merry Christmas.
Peace out.
Peace out.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.
Well, did he convince you? I mean, before this interview, on a scale from 1 to 10, how on board with RVing like were you?
I was probably a 4 to do it as a lifestyle.
And now?
I'm probably a 6 or a 7.
What?
Yes.
Good job, Nick.
Once I found out the toilet was easier than I thought, I'm like, okay,
Also
maybe
that
I
I
could
would
do
do
this. Yes, as long as you're doing the toilet.
Okay.
Maybe we got
I'm
something
going to
here.
do the toilet.
Yeah. No, but we just loved having Nick on. It's great to talk family and just how a younger family is just making it through life. Mm-hmm. And it was so cool to talk about his show, The Great Family Adventure.
And you want to go watch, even if you have kids of all ages, you want to go watch right now their show, The Great Family Adventure. It's really good. Great for all ages. Our oldest son, 23, loves it.
Yep.
It's family friendly for all ages. It's really great. So I think we did good here, being on location in Keystone, Colorado for the first time ever.
On site.
On site.
On location.
So time to go hit the slopes, right?
Okay, let's do it.
Party 5.5, over and out.
We'll see you next time.